Right, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to this meeting of the General Licensing Committee being held under the Local Authorities Coronavirus Meetings Wales Regulations 2020. It is not practical for this meeting to be broadcast live. However, a recording of this meeting will be made available as soon as possible after the meeting has concluded. We have not had any requests to hold a meeting in Welsh language, so it will be conducted in English only. Please can members use the chat bar to indicate when you want to speak, and remember to keep your microphone muted when you're not talking. Moving on to the agenda item 1, attendance and apologies. Chris, do you have any apologies?
Yes, Chair, apologies from Councillor Cathy Evans.
Thank you. Right, agenda item 2, declarations of interest. I'll hand you over now to Claire Lacey, our solicitor. Do you have any advice for members?
Thank you, Chair. Members, you'll be aware that you need to declare if you have any personal or prejudicial interest. Members, if you remember, a personal interest relates to issues where you or a close personal associate may have some links to a matter under discussion. However, as always, it's a matter for yourselves as to whether you have such interests, and if you do, please declare now.
Mine are the same with the previous meeting. The fire, and my brother owns a bus company for the school runs Village of Valleys.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Anybody else? No? Okay, thank you. Right, so move on. Oh, sorry, Councillor Jenkins.
Yeah, I own Jensen Travel, a coach company. I don't know whether that comes into anything.
Okay. Thank you. Is that okay, Claire? Yeah, just note it.
Would you like me to come in, Claire, and just give previously, and just to clarify, Councillor Jenkins, you're not licensed by the authority, are you? It's coaches only, so you don't hold a license with the licensing authority.
No, Department of Transport we get under PSVs.
Okay, thank you. All right then. Right, we'll go on to agenda item 3, which is minutes to the General Licensing Committee from the 25th of the 2nd, 21, which are on pages 3 to 8 in the agenda. Members, do we agree to note? Right. Anybody against? No. Okay, thank you. We go on to agenda item 4, which is the workload update report, quarters 3 and 4, which are on pages 9 to 22. I'll now hand you over to Claire Howells, the team manager for licensing and trading standards, who will present a report. Claire, would you like to start your report?
Thank you, Chair. I'll just share my screen for you as well. Can someone just please confirm that they can see my screen?
Yes, you can see your screen.
Lovely, thank you. So the purpose of the report that I'm about to present to you today is to update the committee on work undertaken by the licensing team during quarters 3 and 4 of the 2020-21 period for matters fallen to General Licensing Committee, and those functions are as specified in 3.1 of the report. So that's Hackney Carriage and private hire licensing, scrap metal, charity collections, street trading, smoke-free legislation, animal establishment licensing, and sex establishment licensing. So I'll take you through each one of these through the course of my report. So the first matter is in relation to Hackney Carriage and private hire licensing. There's been a significant increase in the number of complaints received in relation to the trade during quarters 3 and 4 compared to earlier in the year. Complaints received include allegations of illegal parking, lack of operator signage on vehicles, which is contrary to our policy, and private hire vehicles parking on Hackney Carriage ranks. All complaints received have been investigated and have been dealt with appropriately. There have been 2 complaints in relation to allegations of inappropriate behaviour by licensed drivers, which have also been subject to investigation by Heathley Gwen Police. These matters were dealt with promptly by the police officers investigating, and both have been unfounded allegations with no further action taken by the police. However, both drivers have been spoken to by licensing officers and no further action was needed in respect of their drivers' licenses. 2 complaints were received alleging that licensed drivers returning from international travel were continuing to work and not self-isolating as required. Officers investigated and were unable to find any evidence to support either of the allegations. Both drivers were spoken to and both stated that they had self-isolated following their return to the UK as required. In relation to scrap metal and charity collections, no complaints have been received during the reporting period in relation to either. Street trading, we've had 6 complaints received relating to street trading during the final half of the year. The majority of the complaints have all related to allegations of unlicensed trading, and all have been investigated and where applicable, written advice provided. One complaint related to a licensed trader who had moved locations and was subject to an allegation that he was now trading from a designated bus stop. Licensing officers liaised with colleagues in the Highways Department and found that the site was not a designated bus stop, and the complainant was informed. We've had 3 applications for street trading consents that have been determined at licensing panel during the final 2 quarters of the year, as they have been contrary to the street trading policy that covers the borough, in particular in relation to being in close proximity to residential accommodation or following an application to trade on a Sunday. All 3 applications were granted. However, one of the 3 was granted with reduced hours, as members of the panel were concerned about the noise, additional traffic and impact upon the residents in the area late at night and into the early hours of the morning. In relation to smoke-free legislation, we've actually had 3 complaints received in relation to the legislation during this period. 2 in relation to drivers smoking in licensed vehicle, and 1 in relation to there being no smoke-free signage in the vehicle. In relation to the 2 drivers, 1 has been issued with a warning letter as the complainant refused to provide a witness statement. The second driver has been issued with a fixed penalty notice of £100, which is reduced to £75 if paid within 15 days of issue. The driver has paid the notice fee. The fixed penalty fees have been increased following the implementation of the Public Health Wales Act 2017 and the Smoke-Free Premises and Vehicles Wales Regulations 2020 on the 1st of March 2021. So just to give you a bit of background, previously the fixed penalty notice that we could issue for drivers smoking in licensed vehicles were £50, reduced to £30 if paid within 15 days. Following the implementation of the new Act and the new regulations, this is now increased to £100, reduced to £75 if paid within 15 days of issue. So a significant increase there. We've had 4 complaints in relation to animal establishment licensing. 2 of the complaints have alleged illegal dog breeding activity. Contact has been made with both premises subject to the allegation. 1 has stated that they fall outside of the licensing requirement, and 1 is currently being pursued for a response. Sex establishment licensing, we've had 1 complaint received during the reporting period that a shop in the Pontypool area is selling sex articles without the required licence. Officers have visited the premises and confirmed that a small amount of articles are being sold. However, a licence is not required, as the legislation provides that only a business with a significant degree of selling, hiring, exchanging, lending, displaying or demonstrating sex articles requires a sex shop licence. Although significant degree is not defined by case law, only a very small number of sex articles are being sold in the premises, falling outside of the significant degree. However, members, please be assured that we are in constant contact with the shop, and the shop will be monitored going forward. In terms of work results, the workload activity report is attached at Appendix A, showing the work undertaken by the team during the course of the year. As explained previously, the programme of inspections in place for the year had been previously paused in response to the coronavirus pandemic, and the number of service requests dealt with by the team in relation to providing business advice has continued to see an increase, and this is evidenced in the activity report. It is worth noting that members of the team do not only give advice in relation to licensing matters, they also give advice in relation to coronavirus regulations and restrictions as well. Time and resources has been continued to be directed towards communicating advice to the various sectors via mail merges, social media releases and updating our website, and we are unable to account for this in the activity report. Officers have made significant progress in meeting the agreed targets during the final 6 months of the year. They've considered and implemented alternative ways to carry out inspections where it has been necessary to enter people's homes, primarily in relation to animal establishment licensing, and where it has been requested, inspections have been carried out via Microsoft Teams. Officers have continued to work from home and have continued to adapt the procedures in place for accepting and processing applications. And as mentioned previously, officers have continued to see people where needed face to face. In terms of policy, a separate report will be presented to you next in relation to policy changes affecting the Hackney carriage and private hire trade following the implementation of the Department for Transport's statutory taxi and private hire standards and the Welsh Government Harmonization document, which Robin will explain to you in the next report. There has been one complaint against service during this period in relation to lack of information passed to the Hackney carriage and private hire trade concerning the availability of grants. The complaint was investigated and found to be unsubstantiated as correspondence had been sent to the driver but had been overlooked. It is recommended that the Licensing Committee note and comment on the contents of this report and note the activity report for October 2020 to March 2021. Thank you, Chair. That's my report.
Thank you, Claire. Right, members, you got any questions on the report? Councillor Evans, got your hand up?
Yeah, the only one I wanted to ask on page 11 with the smoking, is that incorporate the vaping as well, or is it just the normal tobacco?
Right, okay, so in terms of vaping, it's a policy offence. It's contrary to our policy if drivers are found to be vaping in their vehicles. So, you know, we don't issue fixed penalty notices for vaping, but committee previously agreed that our policy changed to say that vaping would not be allowed in our licensed vehicles. It's quite difficult from an enforcement perspective when you see somebody smoking in a vehicle to determine whether or not they're actually smoking a cigarette or they are vaping. So it was agreed that if we implement a policy to say that no vaping, that would sort of clear up any issues in respect of that.
No, that's great. I just wanted to make sure that we were incorporating that and it wasn't a problem with M3, that was all.
No, to be honest, we haven't, to my knowledge, we haven't ever had any complaints about people vaping in vehicles. You know, a lot, in terms of the driver that was caught smoking, it was information that was provided to us by our civil parking enforcement team. So you can see there's lots of crossover work between different council departments and the sharing of information.
Okay, members, any other questions? No. Okay, thanks, Claire, for a comprehensive report once again. Right, members, the recommendations are on page 13 of your agenda. I'll now invite members to state whether they wish to vote for, against, or abstain. Once again, I'll hand you over to Geraint Thomas, who's the Senior Business Support Officer, who will call out each member's name. Geraint.
Thank you, Chair. If I can start with Councillor Karen, please.
I agree to note the reports.
Councillor Davis.
I agree.
Councillor Evans.
Agreed.
Councillor Hawler.
Agreed.
Councillor Jenkins.
Agreed.
Councillor Overton.
Agreed.
Councillor Parish.
Agree.
And Councillor Powell.
Agreed.
Thank you all. That's unanimous, Chair.
All right, thanks, Geraint. Thanks, members. Right, then we move on to agenda item 5, which is the National Standards for Taxi and Private Hire Vehicle Licensing, which is on pages 23 to 102 on the agenda. I'll hand you over now to Robin Gray, the Senior Licensing Officer, who will now present his report. Robin.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. I'll just bring up the report so I can go through it. Just bear with me. Okay, hopefully that'll be coming up for everybody to see. Again, I'll just summarise the report rather than reading through it all. So this is regarding the national standards that are proposed for taxi and private hire vehicle licensing. In July 2020, the Department for Transport, the DFT, published statutory standards for taxi and private hire vehicle licensing under section 177 subsection 1 of the Policing and Crime Act 2017. The aim of that was to raise the standards and bring consistency to the approach of local authorities in England and Wales in the regulation of those involved in the carriage of passengers for hire and reward. Now, section 177 subsection 4 of the Policing and Crime Act 2017 requires that we, as a public authority with licensing functions under taxi and private hire vehicle legislation, we're required to have regard to the DFT standards, and a copy of the standards is attached to the report as Appendix 1. So this is included in the report, but I won't read through it. It's quite a large document. But the DFT are expecting all local authorities to adopt the standards unless there is good reason for doing so. And they've also suggested that they will name and shame those authorities that don't act. Today, we've been made aware that a letter has been coming to us at some points soonish, I believe, from the DFT, saying that they're expecting local authorities to kind of amend policies by the end of this year with a view to implementing next year. So we've kind of now been given a timescale, but obviously we're still at the early stages of only recently received guidance sort of thing. Now, as the committee will no doubt be aware, taxi and private hire licensing in Wales is a devolved function, and the Welsh Government is looking to review taxi and private hire legislation to bring it into the 21st century, whilst incorporating taxis into the transport strategy for Wales. It's for this reason that the DFT have agreed to the Welsh Government monitoring the Welsh local authorities' implementation of the standards. So whilst the DFT have given a deadline of the end of the year, we're yet to have confirmation of that from the Welsh Government, although it's probably likely to be the same. Now, on the 21st of March this year, so just over a month ago, the Welsh Government published its Guide to Harmonization of Taxi and Private Hire Vehicle Licensing in Wales. That was a document produced jointly by the Welsh Government, the Welsh Local Government Association, and also representatives of local authorities in Wales. A copy of the guide has been included in the report as Appendix 2. In a similar way to the DFT standards, the guide seeks to encourage a more consistent approach to taxi and private hire licensing across Wales. A large proportion of the DFT standards are incorporated into the Welsh Government guide. But for ease of reference, a table has been included in the report as Appendix 3, and that shows a comparison between the standards, the DFT standards, and the Welsh Government guide. So that's kind of the background. We have the DFT standards and also the Welsh Government guide. We'll be required to feed back to the Welsh Government on how we're looking to implement the standards and where we're not implementing them, why we're not. But as the guide was only published last month, we've not had time to fully digest it, kind of consider how it will affect our policy and what changes need to be made to the policy. So, so we propose to bring a report back before the committee the next meeting and include a draft revision of the council's policy on the administration regulation of Hackney carriage and private hire licences for the committee to discuss. So that's kind of the next stage in implementations of the standards sort of thing. Once we have an agreed draft, obviously it'll be subject to consultation with the taxi trade and also other relevant parties and also the general public. So that's going to be quite an extensive consultation process, but we propose after the next meeting, if the committee are happy for us to do so, that it will go out for consultation over the summer with a view to coming back before the committee in the autumn, and then we can hopefully implement end of the year, ready for everything coming into effect next year. In addition to the committee receiving the report at the next meeting, or prior to the committee considering the report at the next meeting, we propose writing to the taxi trade to make them aware of both the DFT standards and also the Welsh Government guide, so that they sort of give notice of that before we undertake any formal consultation, because there are going to be implications for them, no doubt. So we propose to write to all licence holders, those be drivers and also vehicle proprietors and private hire operators, so everybody will be made aware of what the DFT and the Welsh Government are proposing. And also that will give them the opportunity to feed back any particular parts of the policy that they want us to review, so that can be considered by the committee before we go out to formal consultation. So that's kind of where we are with the Welsh Government guide and also the DFT standards. We have to act basically, but further reports will become before the committee for further consideration. So the recommendations for the report are that the committee note the recommendations set out in the DfT statutory guide and also the Welsh Government's guide to harmonisation of taxi and private hire vehicle licensing in Wales. Secondly, that the committee agreed to consider the recommendations and their potential implementation into a fine at a future meeting. And thirdly, that the committee agreed to the licensed taxi trade and tour fine being notified of the recommendations set out in the DfT standards and the Welsh Government guide in advance of any formal consultation. And that's to make them aware of any potential changes that may be made to the council's policy on the administration and regulation of Hackney carriage and private hire licences. And that's the report, Chair.
Thank you, Robin. Members, questions? Councillor Curran.
Thank you, Chair. I got a couple of questions, really. The first one is paragraph 3.7 on page 25. To carry out enhanced DBS checks on drivers at 6 monthly intervals rather than the 3 years as currently practiced. I can see you're saying full consideration and recommendations and how they may be implemented in tour fine is therefore required, but it does seem to me that that's a rather onerous. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm one of the first to think that, you know, we need to ensure that everybody driving a taxi is a, you know, is a reasonable person, and you know, but it strikes me that 6 monthly intervals is going to be an onerous task, and I presume that the taxi drivers are going to have to pay for this themselves, which is going to be a significant cost.
Yes, that's right. I don't really know that there's going to be a way we can get around it, how we can argue that the cost to the trade is going to override sort of public safety. But I don't know whether the committee are aware, but there is an update service that the DBS offer. So once you've had a DBS check carried out within, I think it's 14 days, maybe 28 days, you can sign up to the update service, and for a reduced annual cost, you'll basically put on the update service, and anybody that you give permission to can check to see that the DBS certificate you've got is current. So there haven't been any changes since it's been issued. So whereas a DBS costs £40, if a driver signs up to the update service, they'll pay £13 a year. So it will kind of work out approximately the same over the 3-year period, but we can carry out the checks at 6 monthly intervals. We can't necessarily make it mandatory that they sign up to it. So if they don't want to, then I mean we'll help them where we can to sort of you know, facilitate it, so they can come into our office. We can sign up. They can sign up online. We can assist them in doing that. But if they're adamant they don't want to sign up to it, then they would be required to do the 6 monthly DBS checks at a cost of £40 per go. So I don't know that really the Welsh Government or DfT would agree to it continuing as a 3-yearly check. But it is going to be a change that is going to take some getting used to, I think. And it's also additional work for us, because instead of doing a check every 3 years, we're going to be doing it 6 monthly. So potentially there'll be a knock-on effect to license fees. But we're, you know, if it's something that's needed, we can't really argue our way out of it, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, it strikes me that annually would be more sensible. I mean, every 6 months does seem onerous to me, but then again, and the other ones I've got 2 others really. One is on page 81, and this is in the Welsh documents now, about overseas criminal record checks. All applicants for a higher Hackney, Carriage or PHV driver's license that have spent 6 or more continuous months outside the United Kingdom since their 10th birthday will need to provide evidence of a criminal records check from the countries visited during that period. That seems to me as if that's going to be very difficult going forward.
It's something that's potentially going to impact quite a few of our drivers. So at the moment we do require like a reference from a foreign embassy if someone's lived abroad, I think off the top of my head, in the previous 5 years.
I'm just having a look now, just so I can clarify.
But I mean, I'm thinking, you know, we have refugees coming into this country from you know, some countries that are, you know, are considerably iffy, shall we say, and as a consequence, they're going to have terrible trouble trying to get that. I mean, imagine trying to get one of them from Syria or Afghanistan.
So our current policy states that all applicants that have recently immigrated to the UK or has spent more than 6 months living outside of the UK or EU country must also submit a certificate of good conduct issued by the country of residence in that period when necessary on application or renewal. So yeah, this is going above and beyond that by taking it back to age 10.
Yeah.
But we have got something there already that our trade are used to having to conform to.
Okay, it just strikes me that there are going to be some immigrants to this country from places like Syria and Afghanistan who are going to find it terrible to try and produce that, because the regime itself is not going to be helpful. You know, they fled the country, and they, you know.
I mean, if there's anybody that wants to make an application that's not able to produce anything that's required, then it would no doubt come before the members for them to make a decision, and you'd be able to kind of say, well, in this case, we're going to grant a license regardless, sort of thing. So I mean, and as I say, these are national standards. So it's something that that most, well, pretty much all local authorities in England and Wales are going to be requiring anyway. So everyone's going to have difficulties, no doubt, in complying. But again, we'll have a discussion locally, nationally, just to see what the feeling is on it, and bring that back before the committee next meeting. So we might have more information on how it's going to work in practice. As I say, we're kind of at an early stage at this point. So, but it is, yeah, it's going to be difficult inevitably for some people to get that information.
And two more questions, if you will indulge me, Chair.
Yeah,
The other one's on page 83. Driver dress code. I mean, I can't see any details. It does say in here, a dress code for licensed drivers has been set, which is detailed in taxi and private hire vehicles dress code. But I don't know if I'm looking in the right place, but I can't see anywhere that says exactly what they're going to have to wear. I was just, once again, that seemed a peculiar one. I mean, I can see where they're getting at. You know, you wouldn't want, you know, you wouldn't want your drivers in a pair of shorts and a string vest, but you know.
I think that's kind of where they're coming from. I don't know that they have. I've not noticed that they've specified exactly what. It's not going to be like a uniform for like a national uniform for taxi drivers, but I think it's more about minimum standards. So it's not wearing anything that could be any clothing with logos or wording that could be considered offensive, or a string vest or shorts or something. But again, we'll sort of go through the recommendations and bring back kind of more information to the next meeting. So
and one last one. I'm looking at Appendix 3, where there's the DFT recommendations, and then included in the Wales Harmonization Guide. There's an awful lot of no's in there.
Yes.
And as a consequence, I'm a bit concerned that we're going to lose a lot.
We'll seek clarification from the Welsh Government and the Welsh Government Local Government Association on that. That the reason that I understand they've not included all of it is because the Welsh Government are looking to change the legislation. So they've just focused on the points that the DFT have said are kind of really priorities for them, and everything else has been sort of shelved slightly. So that's my understanding. I don't know whether Claire can offer any other kind of any other explanation, but that's something we can go back and seek clarification on why they're not looking to, why the Welsh Government haven't included things like whistleblowing policy, reviews of licensing policies every 5 years, and other things within their guide.
I think there's a lot of clarification.
But we will go through the.
Sorry, go on. I see there will be points that we will need to clarify as we go along. The report today is an information report for members primarily, just to say this is on the horizon. You know, we will be going out to consultation as well, and we will obviously keep you updated as and when we get clarification on the points that you are raising.
Thank you.
Karen? Is that all your questions, Councillor Karen?
Oh, yeah, that's my lot. Thanks.
Yeah, can I just thank you? Those really good questions. And can I thank our team as well for the really comprehensive responses? You know, it was really good. Thank you. Any other members got any questions you'd like to ask? No? Okay then. The recommendations are on page 26, the agenda. Right, so I'll now invite members. Oops. I now invite members to state whether they wish to vote for, against, or abstain. Once again, I'll hand over to Geraint Thomas, the Senior Business Support Officer, who will call out each member's name. Geraint?
Thank you, Chair. If I can start with Councillor Karen, please.
Agreed.
Councillor Davis.
Agreed.
Councillor Evans.
Agreed.
Councillor Hawler.
Agreed.
Councillor Jenkins.
Agreed.
Councillor Overton.
Agreed.
Councillor Parish.
Agreed.
And Councillor Powell.
Agreed.
Thank you all. That's unanimous, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Geraint. Right, we'll go on to agenda item 6, which is approval to extend the departure from Torfaen County Borough Council's policy on the administration and regulation of Hackney Carriage and private hire licences during COVID-19 restrictions. This is on pages 103 to 108 of the agenda. I'm going to hand over once again now to Claire Howells, who's the Team Manager for Licensing and Trading Standards, who will now present a report.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. And this is the last report for this afternoon. So please bear with me while I share my screen. And can someone just confirm that they can see the screen?
Yes, we can see it. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of the report, the last report for this afternoon, is to approve the extension of the previously agreed departure from policy in relation to Hackney Carriage and private hire driver renewal applications during the COVID pandemic. To give some background, in May 2020, a report was presented to the committee seeking the approval to depart from the current policy in relation to the requirement for licensed Hackney Carriage and private hire drivers to provide a Group 2 medical certificate from their GP or GP at the practice with access to their medical records. The situation arose from the pandemic, highlighting that GP practices were no longer carrying out what were deemed to be routine appointments, as drivers were then unable to meet the application criteria for licence renewals. The committee agreed the departure from the policy and approved a self-declaration process whereby drivers could complete a self-declaration form indicating whether or not, to their knowledge, there had been any changes in their medical circumstances since the date of their last medical. This was initially agreed to be put in place for 6 months, and a copy of the form that was approved is attached to Appendix A. In February 2021, a report was brought to committee to extend the departure from policy until the end of March 2021, and approval was granted. Over the last few months, it has become evident that some GP practices are resuming routine appointments, and the majority of our drivers who submitted a self-declaration to the licensing team in the absence of a full medical report have now been able to provide full medical certificates. There are currently 6 drivers who have submitted a self-declaration form at the time of writing this report that were yet to submit a full medical, and there is ongoing contact with those drivers to ensure that they submit the required forms. There are 61 drivers who are now due to submit medicals up to and including the 31st of December 2021 from the date of the report. In view of the potential for the continuation of the restrictions over the forthcoming months, albeit it is hopeful that these are reduced, the availability of GP appointments could continue to be reduced. Therefore, it is possible we could be faced with some drivers unable to get an appointment to see their doctor or see their doctor in a timely manner. And if they are unable to provide a medical certificate, applications to renew licenses would have to be rejected, meaning that the driver would be unable to work. It is therefore required that consideration be given to extending the departure from policy until the end of the year to enable existing licensed drivers to continue to work, subject to there being no change in their medical circumstances since their last medical examination. Please be assured that the self-declaration process will only be used in circumstances where a licensed driver is unable to get an appointment at their own GP practice when routine appointments are not carried out. Consultation has previously taken place with other local authority licensing teams and Torvine's legal department, and a similar approach has been taken by our neighbouring authorities, and the approach has previously been supported by our legal team. Consultation has not taken place with the trade, as any temporary policy change would allow them to continue to work through these unprecedented times and would be of a benefit to the trade and would not disadvantage any licence holder. It is therefore recommended that the committee review this report and consider a further extension to the departure from policy that was agreed in May 2020 and further agreed earlier this year. And those recommendations, Chair, are listed in section 8 of the report. Thank you, Chair. That is my report.
Thank you, Claire. I was going to say, Councillor Karen, got any questions? Go on then. You're on mute, Councillor. Yeah.
It always seems to be me, doesn't it? Just wondering, approval is sought to extend the departure from policy until the end of December 2021, but it's coming back to us in October 21. And I'm just wondering, I mean, you mentioned the fact that you've got all these drivers up until the end of the year. I just wondered why there was that difference. Is it just that?
I put the October date in as a review date. You know, if you preferred, I could bring it back to every licensing committee on a quarterly basis to review. I just thought, you know, we don't know what situation we're going to be in this time next month, never mind sort of in December. So my intention was to request an extension to the self-declaration until the end of December. However, we could then review it in October's meeting to see where we are and sort of gauge if we needed a further extension post December, because then we've got we're about to go through an extensive number of renewals for our drivers. So again, we'll have the ability in October to review whether or not there have been problems for our drivers getting the required medicals.
That sounds good to me.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Parish, your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I mean, I would support this and take it to December, because I know my surgery isn't back to normal, you know, and lots of other surgeries, they are not seeing people face to face at the moment. Well, not many people. So I would support this. So I propose we agree to it.
Thanks. Members, any other questions? No? Claire, have you got anything you want to say?
No, you know, if you would prefer me to bring it back to every committee, I've got no issues with that. They are suggested dates because for the reasons I explained. But if anybody would prefer me to bring it back to sort of June's committee going forward, please let me know now.
I just think October would be stated, because you know things are changing so rapidly. We just, you know, just leave it as it is.
I think you know,
I'm quite happy to leave it as it is myself. I think it's more logical.
Yeah, I think from the reports that have been presented to you today in both statutory and general licensing committee, we've got a lot of work and a lot of reports coming before you in the next coming months. So you know, you will be subject to lots of consultation, etc., etc. So it just made more sense to sort of go to December rather than having to bring it back every quarter.
Okay. Right then, any other questions, members? Any questions? No? Okay then, the recommendation is on page 104, 105 of the agenda. Once again, I invite members to state whether they wish to vote for, against or abstain. Geraint, can you call out each member's name, please?
No problem, thank you, Chair. If I can start with Councillor Karen.
For.
Councillor Davis.
For.
Councillor Evans.
For.
Councillor Hawler.
For.
Councillor Jenkins. Doesn't seem to be at his screen right now. I'll come back. Councillor Overton.
For.
Councillor Parish.
For.
And Councillor Powell.
For.
All right, Councillor Jenkins.
Oh.
It's unanimous without him, Chair. It's up to you.
Well, he's not at his workstation at the moment, so yeah, it's just going to be carried through anyway. So just leave just that, I think. Okay, so as long as everybody's happy. All right then. So we move on then to agenda item 7, which once again is the date of the next meeting. This will be announced at a later date. So can I just thank everyone for their attendance and contributions today, and I'll now close the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye now.